What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we are going back to the rant series, and we are going back to baseball. We've only done one rant of baseball so far. This time, unlike doing a singular team, we're going to do a full division minus a singular team, as we're going to do the AL East. Now, we're going to be discussing 4 of the 5 teams in the AL East. The Boston Red Sox will get their own video. So in this one, we will discuss the Baltimore Orioles, New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays, and Toronto Blue Jays. So without further ado, we'll jump right in and discuss the Baltimore Orioles, a small market club that tried to compete. So the problem with baseball and why it's losing a lot of viewership is pretty simple. We have no salary cap, which, okay, I get it. There's a luxury tax. I get that. I'm not here to make the argument that there should be a salary cap or shouldn't be. But small market clubs are done. They cannot really compete. They can't build anything more than a 3-year, 4-year team. And then they have to go back and do a rebuild. We've seen it with the Kansas City Royals. We've seen it with the Baltimore Orioles even. So this team tried to compete in the mid-2010s. And they were decent. The problem was they couldn't get all the bats and all the pitching that they needed to actually make a run. So, while yes, they had some good power bats and some good bats in general, I should say, they were never going to be a World Series contender. So, why throw all the money when you're not going to be able to compete? I didn't understand that when Baltimore did that. It boggled my mind and it upset me. Keeping Chris Davis over Nick Markakis. So I have a friend who's a very big Orioles fan. He loves the Orioles, and if he found this video and he found that I didn't mention that they kept Davis over Markakis, he would make sure I know. So we went to a Red Sox-Orioles game back in 2019, and I was rooting for the Orioles with him. And literally anybody that would talk to him about the game or about the Orioles, he would mention, yeah, at least your team didn't keep Chris Davis over Nick Markakis. So, it was just something. But, yeah, I'm a big Markakis fan. If you guys know my baseball philosophy, we'll get to it in a little bit. When we get to Toronto, I'll discuss it a little bit more. But I would prefer to keep Markakis over Davis, regardless if they're in their primes. I would keep Markakis over Davis any day. So, being a doormat in the late 2000s. So, the Orioles were just a pushover team in the 2000s. And early 2010s, and they just always a bottom feeder for the most part, which meant the Yankees and the Red Sox, 2 teams I don't like that much, would beat you up, and even the Rays took their crack at it, and that just upsets me, especially when you let Boston and New York beat you up. That's just no. And of course, they have the infamy of losing a 30-3 game, so there's that. And lastly, wasting Camden Yards. So Camden Yards is one of the most beautiful ballparks in Major League Baseball, but Baltimore can't fill it up. They can't do anything with it. I want to go to Camden Yards one day, but Baltimore just really not a good place to be right now. Not a great city to check out right now, and I wouldn't feel safe in the area. Inside the ballpark, maybe. New York Yankees, 27. If you know a Yankees fan, you know what 27 is, so I need to go into detail on that one. No, I'm not going to. Payroll. So, when I was writing this down, I actually gotten through this video, and I'm like, you know what? I need to mention payroll. So, the Yankees are one of the problems with baseball with their payroll. They don't really have a payroll. They just throw money at whoever they want. Case in point, Jacoby Ellsbury, Johnny Damon, Alex Rodriguez. The list goes on and on and on, and we'll get to A-Rod in a minute. And it boggles my mind that they can throw all this money around and still have money to spend. It's the Dodgers, the Red Sox, arguably the Phillies and the Cubs are the teams that are ruining baseball because they have the deepest pockets. So they just throw money at whatever they want, and if they don't like it, they just trade it and they throw money in the trade. So it's annoying. It's really irritating. Aroyd, yes, I wrote Aroyd. So Alex Rodriguez, as you guys know, Alex Rodriguez was one of the most feared power sluggers in the 2000s and early 2010s, and he definitely helped the Yankees out a lot. And they used their big payroll to get him from Texas via trade and then signed him to this massive contract extension towards the end of when his original massive contract was going to run out. Now, news has come out, of course. He was mentioned in the report that listed him as a steroid user. He denied it. Then he got in trouble. He got suspended for a season. And that's why we call him A-Royd. You can't like Alex Rodriguez. You can't like Alex Rodriguez. Sorry. That's all I got to say. 2009 World Series. Yankees beat my Phillies in the 2009 World Series. I remember that World Series. We had a good team in Philadelphia, but the Yankees were better, and the Yankees got the victory. So yeah, I would have liked to see Pedro Martinez go off with a win, but it is what it is. Defeating the Whiz Kids again. Yankees beating the Phillies in the World Series, 1950 World Series. Phillies were a really good team, young team, full of bonus babies, and Yankees defeated them, so swept them. So 2004 ALCS. If there's one team I hate more than the Yankees, it's the Red Sox. And the Yankees blew a 3-0 lead in the 2004 ALCS to the Red Sox. So how do you think it was? How do you think it was up here, being somebody who at that time was a Yankees fan, hearing it from all these Boston fans? And then if it couldn't get any worse, I just moved to the area. Later that year, or early in the next year, the Patriots would win the Super Bowl again. So yeah, thanks Yankees. Appreciate that. Really do. Really do. George Steinbrenner and his feuds. So Steinbrenner was one of the most hated owners in the history of baseball. He obviously got banned for life, then he came back. But Steinbrenner was just a very sleazy guy. He was a shadier owner. He was a shadier owner, and he upset a lot of people with his attitude, his personality. He was constantly butting heads with the commissioners of baseball, and when the AL president was an actual thing more than a ceremonial thing, he would butt head with the AL presidents all the time. And it just, nobody likes Steinbrenner. And, case in point too, Dave Winfield. If you watch the History of the New York Yankees video, which has been out for a few weeks now, if not a month. Yeah, it's been longer than that. My apologies. It's been a month or two at this point. Sorry, 2020's been weird. But you'll hear some crazy things about Steinbrenner with Winfield. He called out, he basically called a famous gambler, and said, hey, get me some incriminating news on Winfield. And there was legitimate fear that Winfield was going to have somebody, Steinbrenner call a hit on him. If Steinbrenner's cool with calling in anybody, what's to stop him from calling in a hit? Aaron Judge and Mike Giancarlo Stanton. Yeah, showing my age, remembering when Giancarlo was known as Mike. Just to really upset Yankees fans. So, yeah, I said I would discuss my philosophy of baseball when I got to Toronto. I'm going to do it right here, too. I don't like the power hitters. I don't like the direction baseball's going in. I want a kid who's going to hit me 300, get on base, 35, get on base 35, 40% of the time. I want that player over the guy who's going to hit me 210 and just strike out 70% of the time. I don't want that garbage. I'm sorry. It's not worth it. I prefer the power. I prefer the contact hitters. Give me any contact hitter over Aaron Judge and Mike Stanton. And yeah, I don't like Judge's attitude. Stanton doesn't really have the attitude, but Judge does. Judge goes in there, and he goes and he deletes the picture of Altuve after the cheating scandal came out. Man up, just keep it there, so what? Let people say what they want to say. Lastly, we have treatment of other clubs. So I mentioned the Royals. Back when the Royals were in their infancy, the Yankees ownership was good friends with the Royals ownership, and they basically would bully them into taking bad players for the Royals' good players. It wasn't even just the Royals. They would do it with the Athletics. They would do it with the Red Sox, obviously Babe Ruth. They would just buy players from any team. And it's not a great approach. It's not a great look for baseball. So now we're going to go to the Tampa Bay Rays elite bullpen. As a Phillies fan, looking at a team that has a good bullpen boggles my mind, and I hate it. So yeah, come at me, Tampa Bay Rays. I can't stand you guys having a good bullpen. Our bullpen was like the second worst in MLB history. And you guys have this amazing elite bullpen. I think 12 players earned saves for the Rays this year. That's just insane. That's just insane. I'm sure 12 players blew saves for the Phillies this year. Like, come on. 2020 World Series. Again, sticking on this year. This team doesn't, understand. This team just doesn't have the ability to win the World Series, and they lost to the Dodgers, and I was really rooting for them in the 2020 World Series. All my friends were rooting for them. I think most people were rooting for the Rays over the Dodgers, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. The last point for the Rays, because I really don't have too much to say, they're not an old team. Tropicana Field. What a dump, for lack of a better word. What a garbage stadium. I want to say worse, but not going to. It's such a garbage stadium. Nobody wants to go to Tropicana Field and see the ugliness that is Tampa Bay Rays Stadium. Also, why'd you guys change your names from Devil Rays to Rays? I know plenty of people who still call them the Devil Rays, and that's been changed for over a decade at this point. Lastly, we have the Toronto Blue Jays, choosing Buffalo over Hartford in 2020. Now, this won't age perfectly, but in 2020, as you know, there was a whole reason the baseball season was delayed, and Toronto was given the choice to go. They had to play in the United States, and they chose Buffalo over Hartford. Now, that makes perfect sense. I understand. That's their AAA affiliate. They own the rights to the stadium. They own the stadium. So I get it, 100%. But I wanted them to come to Hartford. A lot of people want them to come to Hartford. If they came to Hartford for the year, I would have been a Blue Jays fan for 2020, hands down. And you guys would have won a lot of support over here, too. Because a lot of people are sick of the Red Sox and the Yankees. So you guys could have gotten a lot of support for coming to Hartford. But it is what it is. Again, I understand why they did what they did. 1993 World Series. You guys, you beat the Phillies in the 93 World Series. I've seen the videos of that World Series. Was a good World Series, but of course, when you beat my team in the World Series, even if I wasn't allowed to see it, it counts. Jose Bautista, Josh Donaldson, Smash Brothers. So, I mentioned it with the Orioles and the Yankees. I don't like power hitters, so that's a knock on you. Next and last, we have the fact that they're the only Canadian team in the league. I have no problem with Canada, okay? I've said it before, I like the Montreal Canadiens, and I do like the Blue Jays, but when you're the only Canadian team in a sport that was made in America, mastered by Americans, it's just, I don't necessarily have the problem with that. My problem is when the Canadian team wins the World Series. Similar to when the Raptors won the, NBA Finals, it's just kind of like, no, this trophy belongs in America, the United States of America, I should say, not Canada. This was our sport. We invented it during the Civil War. It's a big debate on who invented baseball, but Americans no doubt invented it. So, yeah. So what is one positive thing to say? What is one positive thing to say about each team? Toronto, I do like Toronto. I like a lot of their young kids. I'm a big fan of Kevin Biggio. So I hope Kevin Biggio has a good career. And obviously Bo Bichette, I like him a lot too. I don't mind Vlad Guerrero Jr., but of course he's a power hitter, so he's not my favorite guy of the three. I like Kevin Biggio the most of the three. Tampa Bay Rays. There's no reason to hate you guys, in all honesty. You haven't given me a reason to hate you. And I'm older than your existence, so it makes me feel pretty old when I look back at it and say, wow, I was born before this team existed, fielded a team. New York Yankees. Again, if you've watched the history of the New York Yankees video, you know that my grandfather was good friends with Thurman Munson. And so I can't hate the Yankees. That's the whole reason they don't get their own video, because my grandpa loves the Yankees. My mom, my uncles, my grandpa, and obviously my grandma, they all got to hang out in the Yankees clubhouses in the 70s. So it's pretty cool that my family, knew Thurman Munson. And I don't know if my grandpa ever met Steinbrenner. Probably did at some point. But I have to ask him. But yeah, you guys my family has a history with Thurman Munson, so I can't hate the team. Lastly, we have the Baltimore Orioles. So you guys had my favorite owner of all time, Bill Veeck, as your owner when you were in St. Louis, before you moved from St. Louis to Baltimore. And that move was not at fault of the team. Bill Veeck had to sell the team per the AL president, so I don't hold Baltimore responsible. But why do I like Bill Veeck? Two things he did in Baltimore. He played Eddie Goodell, and when the history of the Baltimore Orioles video is out, if it's not out already, you'll see Eddie Goodell, and you'll get a kick out of what happened with him. He was a shorter person. We don't want to use that word, I know. And he took it at bat, and he got walked on 4 pitches. So, and lastly, he gave Pete Gray a shot. So during World War II, obviously, a lot of the able-bodied men were off fighting in World War II. So he gave a one-armed baseball player named Pete Gray a shot. And believe it or not, Pete Gray actually did decent in the big leagues. Was he elite? No, he couldn't hit, but he was a plus fielder. So, yeah, that was the AL East Rant video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your day.